At 7:42 a.m. on August 4th, 2025, a U.S. Navy A-18 Super Hornet streaks across the skies 65 miles east of Taiwan, right above international waters, when a sharp tone erupts in the cockpit. Enemy radar lock detected. This isn't a passive scan. It's a hard lock, full targeting mode, from a Chinese J-16 closing in fast at over 500 knots. The pilot snaps left into evasive flight. His threat receiver flashes red. Weapons-grade lock. No warning, no comms. Within seconds, countermeasures are armed, flares primed, ECM systems humming. The Hornet's nose dips low to the deck, hugging airspace at 300 feet. This isn't training. This is real. And it could escalate. Fast. The Hornet's pilot pulls hard left. The G-forces hit like a hammer, but he stays locked in. He deploys flares. Brilliant streaks of magnesium shoot off behind the jet, meant to blind any heat-seeking missile. The radar warning stays. The lock is still active. This isn't a bluff. The Chinese J-16 is pressing in. A twin-engine heavy fighter with long-range radar and air-to-air missiles, built for intimidation. And he's doing exactly that. The J-16 is now less than 40 nautical miles out. That's 1 minute from weapons range. Inside the American cockpit, silence. No chatter, no call for backup. Just tight breathing and the low growl of the engines. But what the Chinese pilot doesn't know is this. This Hornet isn't flying solo. 30 seconds earlier, another F-A-18 launched from the same carrier strike group had taken up a flanking position, well behind the J-16, out of radar view. The textbook bait maneuver. If the Chinese fire first, they'll have a second problem on their 6. At 7:43, the lock vanishes. The J-16 breaks right, a hard turn toward Chinese airspace. No shots fired, no radio call, no explanation. But one thing is clear, this was not a misunderstanding. It was a test, a provocation, and it almost triggered something far worse. The American jets reform and maintain position, still inside international airspace, still calm, but now alert. The carrier strike group is 100 miles west. Support is 12 minutes away, but up here, you don't wait, you react. Today, the Chinese jet backed off. Tomorrow, maybe not. This wasn't the first time either, and if recent patterns hold, it won't be the last. Between 2014 and 2024, there were over 300 recorded close encounters between Chinese and Western military aircraft over the South China Sea. Some were professional, many weren't. In May 2023, a Chinese J-16 cut across the nose of a U.S. RC-135 surveillance plane at just 20 feet. The turbulence shook the American jet like a leaf. The Pentagon called it unnecessarily aggressive. China called it standard procedure. In October 2022, a Canadian CP-140 Aurora maritime patrol aircraft was intercepted 5 times in one mission. Chinese fighters fired flares in front of the cockpit and jammed its radar. Australian pilots have been targeted too. In June 2022, a Chinese jet released aluminum chaff directly into the flight path of an Australian P-8 Poseidon, forcing the crew to take evasive action. The chaff was designed to confuse radar. It almost shattered the Poseidon's engine. These aren't accidents. They're pressure tactics. Calculated risks aimed at pushing boundaries, testing responses, and asserting dominance over disputed airspace. Military analysts call it gray zone aggression. Actions that stop just short of war, but still carry real danger. All it takes is a misread, a malfunction, or a missile lock that someone decides not to cancel. And here's the dangerous part. None of these incidents resulted in formal diplomatic talks. No hotlines were used, no resolutions followed, just risk resets until the next flyby. So when a US pilot gets locked up by a Chinese jet on August 4th, 2025, that's not a freak event, that's the new normal. Let's break down what actually happened in the sky on August 4th. When the US pilot saw the warning enemy radar lock detected, it meant that the Chinese J-16 had switched from a search mode to track and lock mode, a focused beam targeting the aircraft's exact position and velocity. The J-16 uses a Type 1473 phased array radar, capable of tracking multiple targets at once, with precision down to just a few meters. Once locked, the fire control system is one button away from launching a PL-12 or PL-15 missile, active radar-guided weapons with ranges up to 200 kilometers. So what did the American pilot do? He followed protocol. Step 1, break line of sight and confuse the missile's tracking. That's where the sharp bank and flares came in. Flares distract heat-seeking weapons. The maneuver disrupts radar locks. Step 2, electronic countermeasures or ECM. The A-18 Super Hornet is equipped with an ALQ-214 IDECM system. It emits jamming signals, decoys, and signal spoofing patterns that make the Hornet appear invisible or displaced on enemy radar. Think of it like a smokescreen, but in the electromagnetic spectrum. Meanwhile, the second Hornet circling behind the J-16 likely activated passive sensors only, collecting data without emitting radar. If it had turned on its own fire control radar, it could have triggered a full engagement. Instead, it stayed quiet, a silent threat. That balance, showing strength without firing first, is what keeps these encounters from turning hot. But here's the problem. At these speeds, the timeline from lock to launch is under 4 seconds. The pilot has to decide right now whether this is a scare tactic or the start of something much worse. One wrong guess, and it's not just one plane going down, it's two superpowers spiraling into conflict. This kind of aerial tension isn't new either. On April 1st, 2001, a U.S. Navy EP-3E surveillance aircraft was flying a routine mission over international waters near China's Hainan Island. It was shadowed closely by two Chinese J-8 interceptors. Then one of them got too close. At over 300 knots, one of the J-8s collided with the EP-3's wing. The Chinese jet disintegrated. The pilot was killed instantly. What followed was an 11-day international standoff. The 24-member American crew was interrogated and detained. The EP was torn apart by Chinese investigators. And the world got a front row seat to just how fast routine surveillance can explode into geopolitical crisis. The Hainan incident marked a turning point. Before 2001, aerial intercepts were tense, but usually professional. After Hainan, they got aggressive. Since then, the Chinese military has consistently pushed the limits, flying closer, reacting faster, and using radar locks as signals of strength. The goal? To test Western nerves, see how far they can go without getting a missile in return. Sound familiar? What happened on August 4th, 2025 echoes that same pattern. A Chinese jet takes a calculated risk. A U.S. pilot reacts. No shots fired, but the tension is real, the danger is real, and the room for error is razor thin. And just like in 2001, one wrong move could shift the global balance overnight. Let's imagine a different outcome. What if the Chinese pilot had fired? From 40 nautical miles, a PL-15 missile would reach the Hornet in under 70 seconds. That's less than a minute and a half to detect, respond, and survive. The missile climbs, locks on using active radar, then dives in at Mach 4. It's built for one thing: long-range kills before you even see the launch. If fired, the Hornet's warning system would have escalated instantly. Missile inbound, jamming, flares, maneuvers. But survival would be far from guaranteed. Now, here's where things really spiral. The second jet, now behind the J-16, would be cleared to fire. Immediate retaliation under rules of engagement, likely with an AIM-120 AMRAAM closing the distance in under 45 seconds. 2 missiles, 2 pilots, but it wouldn't stop there. Both aircraft belong to carrier strike groups. That means AWACS, cruisers, and destroyers in the area. All watching, all listening. And they don't wait for CNN to confirm a shootdown. They go to threat condition red. Electronic warfare systems activate. Aegis cruisers lock their radars on air targets. Air patrols scramble. Submarines moved into intercept positions. The entire region heats up within minutes. Back in Beijing and Washington, the phones start ringing. Crisis teams assemble, but the damage is already done. 1 missile, 2 aircraft, thousands of lives at risk. And then there's the reality. There is no clear protocol for what happens next. There's no hotline script for a mid-air kill between nuclear-armed powers. Just confusion, pressure, and the hope that someone, somewhere, chooses not to escalate even further. In 2025, the line between warning and war is measured in mere seconds and fired from 40 miles away. Why does this happen here? Because the South China Sea isn't just any stretch of water. It is one of the world's most contested flashpoints. China claims nearly all of it, including parts that international law says belongs to Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and open ocean. But they've built artificial islands, armed them with runways, radars, and anti-ship missiles, and declared it their territory. But under international law, including the 2016 Hague ruling, these claims are invalid. Still, China enforces its claims with warships, planes, and patrols. And right in the middle of that is Taiwan. Taiwan sits 100 miles off the Chinese coast and is viewed by Beijing as a breakaway province. But the U.S. treats Taiwan as a strategic partner, selling them weapons, training their forces, and conducting freedom of navigation operations nearby. These missions, like the one on August 4th, are designed to assert international rights to fly where it's legal, even if Beijing doesn't like it. But every mission carries a risk. Chinese fighters patrol their claimed air defense identification zone, even if that zone stretches far beyond their borders. When a U.S. jet crosses into that space, it's followed, locked, sometimes even harassed, and the danger isn't just military. $3.4 trillion in trade, and yes, I said trillion, passes through this region every year. Tankers, container ships, fiber optic cables. A conflict here wouldn't just disrupt U.S.-China relations, it would completely shatter global stability. So when a radar lock flashes in a cockpit just east of Taiwan, it's not just about 2 planes, it's about the future of a region that half the world depends on, whether they know it or not. August 4th was a snapshot. Tense, fast, and almost invisible to the world. But zoom out, and it reveals a much bigger shift. The United States and China are locked in what analysts call strategic competition. Not open war, not peace, something in between. On one side, the U.S. Navy remains the world's most advanced maritime force, built for global reach, rapid response, and dominance in open waters. On the other side, you have the People's Liberation Army Navy, which is growing faster than any modern force in history, with new jets, more warships, space capabilities, and cyber units. And Beijing is becoming bolder in how it uses them. Incidents like this radar lock are just signals, military messaging without words. China shows its willingness to push boundaries. The US shows it won't back down. But here's the problem. Both sides believe that they're acting defensively. Beijing sees US patrols as provocation. Washington sees radar locks as threats. That disconnect is where things get dangerous. Right now, there's no permanent crisis hotline between Chinese and U.S. military commands. No standing agreement on intercept distance. No shared escalation rules in airspace. So when a Chinese pilot hits the lock-on switch and an American pilot has to guess whether it's real or not, well, that's not just risky. That's how accidents become incidents, and incidents become global headlines. Every close call chips away at trust. Every maneuver tests the edge of peace. On August 4th, 2025, two pilots played chicken over the South China Sea. One pulled back, the other held the line, but it could have gone the other way. And that's the point. This isn't training anymore. These are real missions, real weapons, real risk. And with every new intercept, the edge of peace gets thinner and thinner. So the next time you hear someone say, "Nothing ever really happens in these patrols," you can remind them, sometimes not firing is the biggest move of all. Let's see just how long that luck holds. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of viewer we built this channel for. And hey, if you want to go a step further and support this channel directly, join the fleet. You get loyalty badges, priority responses, and help us bring more true maritime stories to the surface. Click join on our channel page and get on board. So, do you think the Chinese pilot meant to fire for real? Or was it just a warning play? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Next time you hear enemy radar lock detected, just hope it's not your Monday. I'll see you next time.